Welcome to the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your dedicated parental alienation coach, here to guide and support families as they navigate the challenges of high conflict divorces and custody battles. On this podcast, we'll share insights, practical strategies, and hope for those on the journey toward healing and justice. Whether you're personally experiencing these challenges or just want to learn more about the complexities of parental alienation and custody disputes, you're in the right place. You are not alone. This is the Fractured Families podcast, where every voice matters and every story is heard. And if you find my conversation helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us reach more families who need it.
Hi, this is Charity with the Fractured Families podcast. I'm back for part 3 with Paul Hendricks. We've heard the horrific outcome of his 7-year battle fighting for his boys, the corruption of the family court, the corruption of the legal system with his ex-wife counsel, and how reunification has failed because the therapist was not qualified, did not understand the counterintuitiveness of parental alienation. So, Paul, we're going to talk about parental alienation. So we're going to bounce around a little bit here and just talk about some of the signs you've seen from the boys over the years, the alienating behaviors of your ex-wife, and the impact this has had on your children. So thanks for being back with me, Paul. And wow, let's get started with how you started to, obviously we've heard the first 2 series on what she has done and how she has separated them, but when did you learn that it was actually parental alienation? And I'm sure you're familiar with the 17 alienating behaviors and the 8 manifestations, but if not, we can talk through that. So let's hear about that.
Well, let's for 1 second, I want to do one thing. After I said no more and I was finished with everything that was going on because I was emotionally drained and I saw this, the therapist calls me up and basically was on the phone crying, demanding money from me to get paid for her therapy because I was paying her. And I said, why don't you go to my ex-wife? Because she was ordered to pay you too. Not a word from her about my ex-wife paying. I said, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, and you're not a reunification therapist. I said, I looked you up and on the website, and it said you're just a marriage law counselor, family law, family counselor. And I said, so you didn't do what you're supposed to do. You're not getting paid anything from me. So this conversation turned into this thing of, well, I'm trying to work with your ex and I'm trying to figure out a way, and I can't believe she did that. I'm like, no, you were a part of the whole thing. So after that whole conversation, I basically said, I don't want to be around her anymore, and I don't want to be in this area. So I needed to figure out what my next step was, because I spent the last 10 years literally in a jail without bars. So I said to myself, I'm leaving California. So I packed my bags, and I'm a specialized tour guide. So I don't have to have a place to live. I can just travel around and do whatever I want and pick up a tour here and there. It's a special thing that I've been doing for years. So I moved out to the South Carolina, and I lived there for about a year. And I kind of just was going to stay there and get a new life going and kind of get things going in a new direction. As I started getting into living there, I realized that, I didn't need to be there. I should be back in California, but I didn't want to go back just yet because I needed to heal. That's kind of what prompted me to start thinking about alienation. When did I start seeing this? When did I start learning about this? And I knew about alienation before, but I didn't realize how bad my situation was. Mm-hmm. And I started just kind of recanting all the stuff that was going on in my whole case. And then I came up with Dr. Stephen Miller, and I'd already seen him in the beginning of my journey. And I rewatched a video of his where he gives a speech in front of a group of city council members and some sort of lawyers in Maine, I think. And he lays out what alienation is, lays out the characteristics of narcissism, sociopathic disorders, cluster B disorders. And a key phrase that he put in there is serial alienation versus mild alienation. And I was like, this is what I would classify as serial alienation at its utmost. I then decided to go back to California and decided after I healed for a little bit, I'd go back to California and I'd get into a better place. But I wanted to be in California in the town that I lived in so that my kids, once they figure out what's going on, and they will figure out what's going on. And the reason why I'm pretty sure they'll figure out what's going on is because I fought to get them for so long. She can twist their minds, but my youngest son can get his mind twisted. And I figured that, these kids have now are old enough to make up their own minds about what's going on and what happened. They're going to come looking for me, I do believe. And as soon as my oldest son turns 18, which is in a few months, I'm going to go sit down with him and talk to him because I have the right. No one can tell me I can't be around him. The family court can't even say that anymore because he's 18 years old. He's legal age. So that's what I'm going to do. So I came back and I've been healing even more and just really looking at the behaviors of what happened and the things that were happening. Like you can see that there was a pattern, and that pattern would always happen, and I couldn't change it because you can't get the kid to come to you to be comfortable with you if he's going to go home and get jacked up again. And I learned this from being in recovery for stuff. So if you want to stop doing drugs, let's say whatever drug of choice you have, the best way to do it is just to detach yourself from the people that are forcing it to you and the environment that you're in, and pull away from it and learn about why you became addicted, the trauma and all the stuff that you faced along the way. What happened with my youngest son is he kept on getting put back into that den of iniquity, that den of craziness with his mother. And I'm sure my older son revved him up too, because I bet you my older son was probably pissed off and jealous that he was actually starting to see me. So I'm sure there was some stuff going on there. And then on top of it, you got a boyfriend or husband, I don't know what he is, who is an alcoholic, an addict, and he has a terrible temper. And the both of them are alcoholics. One of the main reasons I left was because of the alcoholism. You've got that adding on to everything, right? And that environment, So it's been interesting looking at it and looking at people who go through alienation and the different signs of alienation and how the alienation happens. I can't believe I went through it. I knew that my divorce would have been messy, and I knew that was going to be an ugly situation, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. Like I said, in hindsight, I could have given her the house. I could have walked away with nothing. I basically did, right? But I would still be in the situation where I'm at right now. No matter what, I'd be in the same situation. What happens is people isolate. So she's isolated these children from everybody. Matter of fact, her own family refuses to speak to her. So during the whole process of reunification, I had my cousin call up her cousin because they're both lawyers and they both live in Chicago. And I said, why don't you try to talk to her cousin to see if you guys can figure out how to calm down my ex? And basically he said, fine, calls me back 5 minutes later. You won't believe what just happened. I'm like, what? This guy basically said they don't want anything ever to do again with your ex. And I'm like, what? They said they're fed up with her. They've had enough of her. They want nothing more to do with her. I mean, she's basically isolated herself from her family. These kids don't see any of my family. They don't see any of her family. Matter of fact, when her mother comes out with the nephew who's like 15 years old, the same age as my kids. And that's all that comes out. And I think that's just because the mother's older, so that they want to make sure she has a travel companion. Yeah. But no one else comes out. Now, can you imagine these kids asking the question, well, where's my aunt? Where's my uncle? Where's this? Where's that? Where are my cousins? Can you imagine what's going through these kids and what the impact on these kids are? Now, I've come to find out because I have friends that work in the school system. I have friends that work in that town that she lives in. She is not liked whatsoever at either the school or in the town. Matter of fact, one of her neighbors is a friend of mine. I have another friend of a friend. Basically, they say she's the biggest piece of work, and they put a little few adjectives in there to describe her. Yeah. But basically, that's what she says. Now, can you imagine these kids that have this family unit in this small little quaint town that's semi-affluent, and they're in this town, and there's maybe 6,000 people in the town, and how isolated they are, And like, this is what your parental is. Your parental guardian is this woman who's viewed upon as this evil person in town, and the boyfriend's viewed upon as this drunk. And this is what goes on. I know I have friends of mine that were friends with her before I met her, and I'm still friends with them. They just basically don't know what to say when they see me. They don't even have, they just look at me and they're like, I don't know what to tell you. We don't even speak to her anymore, you know? And so, that's kind of, the isolation is one of the biggest things. I mean, one of the things that she's gotten away with her alienation is the isolation of my oldest son. That's something that she was really good at doing, really good at weaving a web of isolating him from everybody. And if he got in front of anybody, he would make sure he would threaten to kill himself, or he would do something else that would throw everyone off. And he'd do it in such a way that was so dramatic that it was pretty damaging. So, like I said, after the last court case, I just said to myself, I can't do this anymore. I said, the golden years are over. This, what I'm doing now, is for other children, and it's for other parents, and it's for people to realize that parental alienation is real. No matter if you want to coin it as parental alienation, you want to coin it as estrangement, however you want to coin it, it is a true fact of life that it happens. And there's two components that go on with the alienation. One is the mental health issue with one of the people inside the relationship. Two, the court system and how broken it is and how it feeds off of that component. And what the other issue is that the therapists out there, they don't, I would say a good 85% of therapists out there to 90% of therapists out there don't have a clue what alienation is. And I'll argue that fact with any therapist at any level, because I firsthand dealt with it, and dealt with over maybe 35, 40 therapists, interviewing them. And you would bring up the components of it. And they would just look at you and be like, well, they call it high conflict divorce, high conflict custody battle, high conflict this. And this last therapist that I used, she sent me to a guy. I had to watch a video. This is part of her therapy. I had to watch a video of this guy from LA, forget his name, who was a therapist in dealing with high conflict divorce and high conflict custody battles. And he'd have these little scenarios play out with that you would watch these videos and stuff. Now, with a person who is non-toxic, vindictive, that will get over the vindictive part, but non-toxic, those videos work out great. But for a person who is toxic and who has a disorder, a borderline personality disorder, because people who alienate and people who do this to children or other people, let's just say in any other scenario, if someone alienates a child or a family member from another family member or a friend from a group of friends, they have some sort of borderline personality disorder or something going on with them where they're not getting the right, how do I explain this? They're not getting what they need out of life. I'll just put it that way. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but they're taking away from someone else's happiness. And alienation.
And not only do these therapists not understand parental alienation, but they can actually exacerbate it and make it worse because it's a one-sided position. And if they fall for the lies of the manipulative, narcissistic, alienating parent, and they believe wholeheartedly that the reason the child rejects you is because they've been abused or you've abandoned them, anything you say and do is scrutinized and questioned. And so even if their behavior is subliminal, it can actually make the situation worse.
Yes, this last therapist I had, she made the situation worse. You asked me if I had recordings before or videotaped or recordings. So I had an early voice recording of my two kids in the car when they were really little, and they were calling me con artist. They were calling me a bunch of other stuff, like things that a kid at age 3 and 5 don't call somebody. You don't use the word con artist. You know, the words on my heart. And in my heart, it tells me if I love you or not. This is what they're saying. And my heart tells me I don't love you and I don't want to see you. This is what these kids are. This is what the kids were saying to me. So when I actually confronted my ex, and we all had this meeting with the therapist, and we decided to move forward, we had to really get this done. I said, why don't you listen to this? And I played it. And when I played it to her, she thought it was funny. And I've played it to some other therapist, and I have my cousin's a therapist, and I played it to her, and I played it to another friend of mine and some other people. They're like, this is disturbing. I'm like, I know it's disturbing. And I played it to this therapist, and the therapist is like, this is so funny. It's cute. Listen to him. Listen to how he speaks. I'm like, kid doesn't speak like this at age 4. And so then I really realized this therapist does not have a clue what she's doing. And I would say a lot of therapists, I call them some of these therapists 60-day wonders or 90-day wonders. They went to a 90-day workshop and got their certificate. And I've looked online for therapy certificates, and you can go online and you can get a therapy certificate and under 90 days. You have to study and do some reading and stuff, and you become a therapist. Any style of therapist you want. Now, psychologist and psychiatrist, behavioral DBT is differently, because I actually lived with a woman for quite a bit who was studying all that too. She was studying to be a therapist too. There's some of these therapists that are out there that I interviewed and talked to. Like, I'd look at their credentials and stuff. I'm like, where did you get this credential? And I'm like thinking, where did you go to school for this? And some of the therapists that I did talk to, I think they needed therapy. Of course. And I'm like, I can't believe this. And you're taking care of kids' lives, and you're actually suggesting to people how the course of kids is supposed to play out. I've done my own damage. I get it. I got to own up for that damage. But when you start seeing a child that you create with somebody being destroyed by the other person emotionally, I mean, the damage with my ex came from her father. Her father was, from my understanding, was not the nicest guy in the world, but I never saw that, so I couldn't judge him on that. But what I was told by her family members and her, that he was this evil tyrant of a guy, and her brother committed suicide, so, I'm the type of person that, sometimes you don't read red flags, but I didn't realize how bad her narcissism was and how bad her cluster B disorder was and her manifestations were, until you start getting into the midst of what was going on. And our kids were her main focus of my hurt. So she wasn't hurting me. I'll put it that way, how I view this. And this is how I'm getting around all this with my own healing. She's hurting her father. What she was doing was to spite her father, but she was using me as the vehicle to do it. And that's something else.
Generational.
Yeah.
It's generational trauma.
Yeah. So she was using that to get to me. She was saying to me, well, my dad did this to us. I'm going to do this to you, type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
But because of her disorder, she doesn't realize the impact it has on the children. And let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about when you did spend time with your youngest son. Did he ever bring up his older brother? Ever? Did that conversation ever present itself?
No, I actually gave him to give a present to his older brother for Christmas. I said, this is for you and this is for your brother. And he goes, my brother won't take it, probably because he hates you. I said, well, that's fine. Just give it to him and see what happens. And I'd always say to him, hey, tell your brother I said hi. Tell your brother I love him and miss him. And he basically would say to me, well, he doesn't care for you. So there was, there's that was going on. And the manipulation, that the devaluing, you got to imagine these kids were devalued on 10 years. The brainwashing has happened for over 10 years.
Well, the brainwashing probably happened, Paul, in the household, and you weren't aware of it because there was already trauma in the relationship prior to the separation. There was probably some of that going on and didn't even recognize, and that's very common.
Well, I can guarantee you, that was happening, because by the end of our relationship, and when we were in our relationship, the violence and her energy that she puts off, her anger energy, like to be around her, the vibe that she would put off was like, I feel like this woman's going to turn to me somehow and knife me with, or like shoot me. Like I didn't want to be around her on certain times of the day. And I didn't want to be around her. Once she started drinking is when I did not want to be around her. And there was times that I was like, what am I doing here? And I only thought about the kids at that point. And I thought, well, maybe I can just hang on to this for the next couple of years. I got this going on. I got this going on. But what people don't realize, and I don't think people understand, in a relationship like that, the whirlwind is going, and there's so much components that they throw at you that they're emotionally messing with you so bad in every single avenue that you would have. Like every single avenue and every single second that you're around them, they would emotionally mess with you. And they mess with you either by the kids, by doing other things that would trigger you, because they know how to trigger you. That's the other thing. Narcissists know how to trigger their target victim, and they know what gets on the target victim's underneath the target victim's skin. So, and once they have you all ramped up and they're amping you up all the time, it's easy for them to go on a tirade with you, and they don't have to do too much. So
So now your children have been living in this abusive household since you separated and left. And they have been victims of her abuse all these years. And if you were an adult with somewhat mature coping mechanisms and you couldn't stand to be around her and you couldn't handle your emotions and you were walking on eggshells and living in fear, how do the courts not see that these kids have been victims of abuse? Like, how did
one of the things that I figured out, and I found out through having conversations with my youngest son, was that she would tell them when we had this court order for me to see my youngest son, she would say, if you don't get home by this time, the police are going to come and throw me in jail because your dad told the court this. So this was reverse psychology, I guess you would say, on the kid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If I brought the kid home 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, a normal parent would say, no big deal, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
a normal kid would not say that. So these kids were such brainwashed that they thought I was going to do harm to their mother. That's my ex played the victim. I guess in different styles of people with disorders, there are different characteristics inside there. Her is the victim game, the blame game. She was the child that she never had enough love when she was a child. She never had this. She never had that. She never had that. I mean, I can go into more components of this, but it would take for hours for that. But basically, she played a victim, and she did a really good job of being a victim. And she came off as the victim. It was always that
Most narcissists do.
right.
Most narcissists come off that way. They
Right.
always, especially in a high conflict case, right? Which is why they tend to have the court swayed in their favor, because everything is about how it's a disservice toward them and they're the victim and I don't have any money. They can be millionaires and I can't believe I'm only getting this much money in child support. I can't believe they want to sell the house. I can't believe I have to buy my own children's clothes and pay medical bills. They can have money in the bank and they will always act like they have nothing, because in order for them to feel justified or anything, they have to be the victim. So people are constantly coaxing them and giving them the attention that they think they deserve. That's sickening.
I like when I look at the situation I got myself into, I'm the blame for that. That's the first thing that I've learned, that I'm the blame for that. And I take ownership for that. You see red flags and you don't jump out because of your own past trauma. The victimization that she throws out, I've met a lot of, with my job, I've met a lot of narcissists. And I've met people who are narcissist, and I've met people who have tendencies and there's a spectrum on that disorder. There's a spectrum for borderline disorders. There's always a spectrum. It's like autism. There's a spectrum. It's either low or high. And my ex spectrum of narcissism is on a very high spectrum. A malignant narcissist, I would call it.
Malignant.
One of the things that she does really well and she gets away with, and I see it with certain people, is instead of talking rationally and having a rash conversation with somebody, she snaps at the blink of an eye and will argue to the point that you'll just shut up and walk away. And that's how she'll win her conversation. And if you don't, she'll have this anger at you for forever. And I've seen her do that more than once in situations that we were together with. And I'd walk away from that situation and be like, I don't want to be a part of this, like at all. It's very, very, I've only seen it in a very few people that I know, but it's like you can have a normal conversation. You can have a heated argument with somebody, or really a heated argument with somebody, and you can have a rational, irrational, but have it in a mild manner way. My ex doesn't do that. It goes from here to 100 within literally a matter of 5 seconds, and it stays there, and it will stay up there at that top level for a long period of time. And I can imagine, and from the documentation I've read with all the school records and everything, and talking to certain people from her school, and I know I have a very good friend that's part of the school system. She has come off and unglued in front of teachers. Matter of fact, my oldest son, at a certain age, at age 10, was arrested for bringing marijuana to school that she and her boyfriend exposed him to. They got away with it, of course, but she unleashed on the flipping teachers for it because they were coming down on her, and she unleashed on them. And then she turns to my son, and this is documented, and says to my son, I'm going to need 2 bottles of wine tonight to drink to get over this. And my son, in this report from the school, was begging not to go home with the mother because he's like, you're going to kill me, aren't you? You're going to kill me. You're going to kill me. And you have to understand, I lived that for almost 5 years. And then some.
Well, how
Because,
was that not used in court?
well, here's the thing. I tried to use that in court, and they used HIPAA, or what's it called, that law?
Yeah.
There's a law, and they said I couldn't use it because it was in a school report, and I entered it into the court, and her
It doesn't
lawyer.
matter if it's in a school, but you're their father. You have access to that
I
information.
know that, but under law, I shouldn't have put that up in the courtroom, and that's what they said. And I'm trying to read into that more because that is a child saying to a mandated reporter, because all teachers are,
Yes.
that I'm being threatened.
Yeah.
I feel threatened, and if anything happened, and let's say my ex goes home and actually does kill my child,
Yeah.
that teacher could be held liable because the teacher didn't.
Well, that reporter should have reported the child's fear.
Right.
Like
Right.
it should not have been covered by HIPAA. It should have been exposed.
Right, totally. But this is where I'm at with the court system, and this is where I define failure in the court system. And the court system fails, a lot, and they use these laws. And I turned to the boy's lawyer. I said, "What are you talking?" They got pissed at me. The boy's lawyer literally got pissed at me, and the judge goes, "I'm going to throw you in jail next time you do something like this." I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "This is documentation. It doesn't matter if it's school records or not. It's
Yeah.
out there. He got arrested. He now has been in trouble with the police. This isn't a police report also." So what happens in the court system is a little bit different, but people don't see that like you see it. Like, I'm very sensitive now, and I'm very, very sensitive now to people who have disorders, personality disorders. I pick up on them right away because I was with somebody. And I
Right.
was with somebody, and I walked away from it. I mean, literally, the day I watched that thing with Dr. Miller, the light bulb in my head turned on. And then Linda Gottlieb, I watched her, and I'm like, and I
Yeah.
watched that guy you told me about, and I watched him. And when they speak about
Yeah.
these light bulbs go off in your head, and you're just like going, "Oh my God, this was me. This was me." And no one knows what it's like to be a targeted victim of someone's abuse.
No.
Unless they're an abuser. Like, evidence for people to go in there and say this person's a narcissist or this person's this, I don't think therapists should be saying that. I don't think therapists should be allowed into a courtroom to say that. Who should be allowed to go in there and say that is the victim, or a person who has been a victim of abuse, of emotional abuse, so they can describe what their emotional abuse was or how the emotional abuse was. I mean, it's strange to say that, and it's coming from a guy like me, that I was abused by a woman. I think there's more emotional abuse going on there right now with women towards men than anything, really, quite honestly. Yeah.
Well, it's downplayed, right? And what happens is anytime, and you said it very early in the first recording, is the silver bullet, right? Because all it takes is for one parent, whether it's a father or whether it's a mother, typically, unfortunately, with the silver bullet, it is the mother. All it takes is for them to say, he physically abused me or my children, and no evidence is required. And it creates enough doubt, very similar to the mandate of the school. If a child discloses abuse, the school teacher and the school is responsible for mandating that. Just the same as a judge. If the judge hears it, they have to err on the side of caution. And that's why it is so successful. And that's why it is so bulletproof, because if you are any reasonable person who is trying to protect children, when you hear that there's abuse, you need to pause and you need to assess. Where the breakdown comes in is the amount of time it takes to do that, right? You don't just get in somebody who actually knows how to interview a child and better understand the counterintuitiveness of abuse, but you drag it out, like your case, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, 4 years. And then before you know it, that relationship is deteriorated. The child lives in a household with an abusive, narcissistic, borderline personality, cluster B parent, and they become a product of their environment. And the amount of negative impacts they have long term is unforgivable. The court never takes responsibility for that, ever.
You know, it's funny because the court's not going to. There's more depth to this. Family court system is a $50 billion a year juggernaut machine.
Yeah.
The state of California alone made off of child support, collecting child support last year or 2 years ago. It's probably in the same range. Is $2.5 billion. They're not going to give that up because that pays the bills, turns the lights on in the courthouse. It pays the bills. Now, majority of the judges, I would say, are like that. Say a good handful of judges are decent judges. And I would say from what I viewed and from my experience dealing with this, and I pretty much can say I'm a little bit of an expert now because I spent 10 years in a court system, going to courtroom almost every week once a week out of a month and having to deal with the court system. And reading up about it, what I see in the Napa County with the lawyers there, I would say a good 85% of them co-conspire. They allow things to happen, and they will make cases go farther along, and they know they can get away with it, and they love to have a narcissistic person come into their office because they know it's gonna roll on.
Profit.
And I saw that. I've seen that more than once in that courtroom. And I saw this judge that I was dealing with, this passive judge. Literally, two people stood up. They were representation. I can't speak right now. They were pro litigants, and the one woman said, and she didn't speak English. Wasn't her first language. They didn't speak English, either one of them, first language. They were very bad at their English. And basically, she said he left kid in car on hot day, and dude said, no, I did not. And the judge immediately took the kid away from the father, appointed a minors counsel, and that starts the juggernaut of the money coming in.
For sure.
Right there.
Yeah.
And then they're going to appoint a therapist. They're going to do some sort of therapy. And that's going to start that juggernaut rolling down. The alienation part is something I don't think a whole lot of judges fully understand. Like I said, I think some do and some don't. But like I said, I think they play off of it. But for the kids and the parents, it's a traumatic thing. And in order for the courts to get fixed, that has to need to be addressed. Mental health has to be addressed. I'm at the point right now, I'm so far removed from that woman. It sucks. And I'm in a very happy place as far as that's concerned. But the stuff that she can get done emotionally with people. And the funny thing is that her flying monkeys that she has around her, and I know people that are there just to monitor the kids, more or less, I would say. I would call those people more corrupt than she is sometimes, because they know what's going on and they see what's going on. The people that are monitoring what's going on and seeing and saying, we're here for the best interests of the children. Well, no, you're not. You're actually, what you're doing is you're telling that my ex's behavior is okay. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that her behavior is okay behavior. So I have to blame the school too, because the school has, so far they can deal with stuff, the scope, but also they see the stuff. I mean, I read the school records. They saw what was going on. And I wrote them a letter and told them basically emotional abuse is abuse. No matter if you think it's not, it's abuse. Courts won't do anything until there is physical abuse being done to the kids. You can emotionally abuse a child all day long on both sides of the coin. No one's going to do anything. because they don't look at it as abuse, because they don't know how to determine if it is abuse. But when I look at people like that, and I look at the teachers and some other people, and they think, well, we're doing it for the best interest of, no, you're not. You're not doing it for, all you're doing is allowing a person with a borderline disorder to get away with their behavior. And you're encouraging them to create more bad behavior. You're not telling them anything to tell them to stop. The spotlight was already on her, and she got away with it because how she reacts to the spotlight. And how she reacts to the spotlight, like a lot of them do, she explodes. And then that's when everyone walks away from her. And that was the other issue that we've had. And the other issue that went on with friends of mine, they just walked away. Didn't say why, they just walked away. And then I've been reconnecting with these friends, and they're like, your ex was a fucking bitch. I didn't want to be around her. I have a very dear friend of mine I've known for over 25, 30 years, and she was my boss. She's like, I can't believe you were even involved with that woman. And sometimes people don't, when they're in that thing,
Right.
they don't see it like
Yeah.
other people see it.
Of course not.
Right.
Not only do they not see it, Paul, but they don't hear. Not only do they not see it, but they don't hear it. So these people walked away because nothing they said would have mattered. I have, in my case with Todd, is they would tell him, she's going to destroy you. She's going to ruin your life. She absolutely is the most evil person we've ever met. And because he's a nice guy like you, they see the good in that person. They say, oh, well, they're broken. They came from trauma. They're trying to heal. This happened to them. So they try to see the good in that. And when people tell them, they don't hear it, because then it makes them become self-aware, and you're not ready to do that because, to your point, you're in it, right? And you're protecting your children, you're protecting your sanity, you're protecting what you believe should be a marriage. And until you stop and say, I can't do this anymore, you're not going to hear or see anything until you make that decision to hear and see it yourself.
Right.
So people
And
don't say anything.
yeah, as far as like dealing with my family, and like I go see them and go back home to visit them, I don't talk about this. I don't want to talk about it. And they want to talk about it. I'm like, I don't want to talk about this. I'm like, I get it. And they even said to my family, we hated her. We hated her from the moment you brought her home. And I'm like, I get it. I messed up. That's me. We can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it. Her own family, like I said, refused to speak to her. The only person who speaks to her is her mother. And she's just as bad. She's just as bad as her daughter, right? But
Yeah, of course.
when you look at the two of them, sweet little innocent people, but
Yeah.
you don't know better until you start really getting to know them. People would always ask me, oh, you're divorced? Because with the business I do, I meet a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, I'm divorced. And like, oh, so your ex has the kids? I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, how's that working out? I'm like, well, my ex is a pretty unique person. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on because I don't want to talk about it. I've had friends that I've met along the way. They come up to me and they're like, I don't even realize you had kids, because it's so much hurt that goes on when you deal with this. Then I've met people that I've talked to and they're like, you're so nonchalant about it. I'm like, well, how do you want me to be?
Yeah.
I can't,
Well, you can't carry that trauma forever. You got to
Right.
heal eventually.
Right. I've got to live my life.
Yeah, you got to heal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's okay, Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, you have fought for 7 years, and then you lived in that hell for the time you were there. And now one day your children are going to come back and they're repeating the cycle of what she's inflicted upon them. So before we close out, let's talk a little bit real quickly about the children and the boys. And what are your hopes and thoughts about as they come into manhood, soon to be 18? What do you hope for?
Well, you hope for the best, and you hope that the best will turn out and things will happen. They'll open up and they'll come to you. But the way my ex is, and the conditioning that she's put these kids through, and some of the things I've read about people who have been through this style of conditioning and this indoctrination, I would call it. And I would use that word as indoctrination because I just watched this whole series on it. It's going to take time to deprogram them.
Yeah.
And
it's like coming out of a cult.
The only way to deprogram them, the only way is people like you, podcasts like this, and having a long list of stuff that happened. When you sit down with that child, you can say, here's my story, here's what happened, here's what's going on, and here's where I am right now. What do you want to do? Go absorb this If you need therapy, we'll go to therapy because you're going to need therapy, and we'll figure this out. When my kid turns 18, oh, hell yeah, I will talk to him. And she can do whatever she wants, but I will talk to him. And the cops can come and intervene however they want. He's 18. Federal law, he's 18. I can go talk to him. No one can stop me from talking to him. And that's what will happen. And he'll be contacted. And we'll go from there. But I'm going to not intervene right now because I'm just going to watch from the sideline and just watch what happens. Because the years that I wanted to have with my children, they're gone. I can't do anything about that. No parents can in this situation. But what I can do is start getting the word out there for other people so other children don't have to go through this, and start trying to help fix the family courts. Because that's the biggest problem right now. The two-component problem. The mental health problem, which needs to be addressed. And we need to get more mental health professionals out there that understand estrangement, I'm not going to even use the word alienation, but estrangement I would strongly use. And we need to classify, are we calling this parental alienation? Or are we calling this personal estrangement? And how do we classify it? Because this word parental alienation is getting a bad condemnation. People on both sides of the coin are using it in the wrong way. Family courts don't want you saying parental alienation in the courtroom. They hate hearing it. They want to use custodial interference. That's still an eggshell word to use. So we need to get more therapists trained in this style of therapy to get inside there to start dealing with it. But also, we need to stop the money train that goes into the court system. And that's the other side. So as far as my kids are concerned, my youngest son, I can't do anything about right now. He's gone through his own drama. He's already in the system. As far as the police system, he got arrested. He's 15. And, he's going through his own drama right now. I was told I should go to juvenile court, but I figured if I went to juvenile court, even though he would see me there, that would have triggered his mom to do some more drama and do some more something, and there'd be more antics that would go on. And it wouldn't go on in front of the courtroom; it'd go on behind the scenes. So,
of course, and then they pay the price.
Yeah, and in their safe place. So I'm just living my life right now, and I'm doing my own thing, and I'm building my life. So when they do realize what's going on, I'm right around the corner waiting for them. You can't do anything else. A lot of the guys I see, a lot of the fathers I talk to, and a lot of the people I see on my forums and my Facebook feeds, they're in this virtual hell that I was in, and they're in this, and you reach out to them and say, just, you got to walk away sometimes. And there's people who fight and win, and there's different situations that go on. My situation was married by a multitude of things: COVID, fires, money related issues, corrupt lawyer. I mean, this lawyer was so corrupt that you would walk into a courtroom and her name would be mentioned and people would look around and be like, oh God, we got to deal with this one again. Like, I don't know how many times I heard about how corrupt she was, like from other lawyers, other professionals at the courthouse hated dealing with her. I mean, you got to deal with that. And add on top of it, because she took a vindictive approach towards me from the get-go. And then I started finding out all about how just terrible of a person she is, and how corrupt she is. And it's just like, and you bring it to the courtroom and they just look at you like, we can't do anything about it. File a complaint. But the bar's not going to really disbar her unless you have some serious evidence on her, because they're making money off of her. It's all a big cycle. So I had all that dealing with that. Then I had to deal with judges that didn't have a clue, and 10 judges on top of it that was just, nobody could have got a fair trial or fair hearing or had anything done. So my situation, like everyone else's situation, is completely different, but the emotional abuse is always the same. The alienation is always the same. The, conditioning is always the same for what goes on to get what they want out of it. So I sit and wait right now and build a better life. So when they come back, I can't do anything about it.
Paul, thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for being a guest on the Fractured Families podcast. And I will make sure and share your contact information should any parents want to reach out and chat with you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fractured Families podcast. I hope our conversation has provided you with support, understanding, and actionable insights to help you navigate your own family challenges. Remember, healing is a journey, and reaching out for help is a sign of strength. You're not alone. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more families in need. You can contact me on social media at Parental Alienation is Real and visit our website for additional resources and ways to get involved. Stay strong, stay connected, and keep fighting for the family bonds that matter most. Until next time, take care and stay resilient.